Picture me at 26, petite but fiercely passionate about wildlife conservation. I moved to a small Maasai community near Mount Kilimanjaro, where lion killing was rampant, and where we had such little time to save the remaining 20,000 lions left in the wild. I was squatting in an old missionary house, and I remember spending my days walking around the community, trying to find people to talk to and understand what was underpinning all the lion killing that I was witnessing all around me. But I felt like an outsider. No one would talk to me, no one would shake my hand, and this went on for month after month. I was literally an outcast in the community that I wasn't even part of. And the mistrust in people's eyes when they looked at me, and I remember them whispering to me, "What is this woman doing here? What does she want from us? We don't want her here." But each day, I would wake up and I would try again. And each day, I would face the same suspicion and the same mistrust over and over again. And then one evening, I heard a knock on my door. And no one ever came to my home, especially at that hour. I opened the door to find a woman, younger than me. She was crying, she was holding a baby, and between her broken Swahili and my little Maasai, I gathered that her baby was so sick and that she didn't know what to do. She wanted me to take her to the hospital, which was over 4 hours away. And so I had an old Land Cruiser. I had a short wheelbase Land Cruiser that never worked, and it had been raining for like 4 hours straight, but I couldn't actually get to the space where she was standing. I couldn't get to the Land Cruiser. And so I finally got her there, got her into the Land Cruiser. Sorry, I don't know why my legs are shaking. This is such an interesting experience. I got her into the Land Cruiser, pushed this vehicle down a massive hill, and the vehicle sputtered alive, and off we went through piles and piles of mud. It was still raining, but we were able to get going, and we drove through a full moon, guiding us to where to go to the clinic. And we arrived to the clinic after midnight, and the clinic saved her, saved this little child. And I remember the woman whispering in the back, "Please don't die, please don't die," but the clinic saved her. And right now, this year, that girl is going to be graduating from high school. And I'm so proud of that. I'm so proud of that. And that was the tipping point of my acceptance into the community. A simple act of kindness resulted in my inclusion into the community, a really big sense of belonging. And after I arrived to the community after this incident, they started inviting me to all of the ceremonies. They started asking me to come for tea. But probably the most important thing that happened was that the Maasai warriors, the group who's responsible for lion killing, they started visiting me in my home. They started talking to me about life, about lion killing, about all these things. And there was this immense trust that was built during those conversations in my home. And that immense trust led to one of the most successful lion conservation organizations in Africa, called Lion Guardians, where we have blended and married indigenous knowledge and science to create a sustainable solution to lion conservation. And what we have achieved was possible because everyone, the Maasai communities, the scientists, and also all of the stakeholders that were there, worked together every single day to protect lions and livestock. And also, I think one thing that was very, very important was that the Maasai community, but especially the warriors, they included us in these important conversations, and we included them as equal partners. And so in almost 2 decades since that late night drive to the clinic, we have seen transformation in our landscape, moving from one of the fastest growing lion populations, one of the fastest declining lion populations on the entire continent, to now the fastest growing lion population. We have more than 6 times the number of lions that we had when we first started. we've also seen transformation in terms of who's included in conservation. So for example, our entire senior Lion Guardians team, or most of them, are from the Maasai community. And many of them have been with us since the beginning of the organization, injecting it with incredible authenticity and enabling us to adapt to real-time social and cultural changes that are happening all around us. But hands down, my greatest joy has been watching the senior team start to take over the organization and lead it into the future. That's where change is. But also, it's also been very difficult for me, right? As someone who has spent so much time trying to get a sense of belonging in a community, to finally have a place where I do have that, where I have spent more than half of my life, the place that I've called my home, to imagine leaving that space. So I absolutely understand founder syndrome and the desire to hold on to something that you helped birth. But it is when we step back and we give others opportunities, especially those that come from these important conservation landscapes, that we start to see long-lasting impact. And so it also, when I think about it, it also takes a huge amount of courage to use our privilege to shift power to other people. And I believe that deep courage comes from a belief or a conviction that we can do a lot more together than we can on our own. And that diversity correlates to much bigger impacts. So when I think about power and privilege, and when we talk about it together, it's always often loaded words. People are very uncomfortable with it. People perceive it as negative even. But it's how we use our power and privilege that matters. And so, as we start to think about the discomfort, the perception of discomfort around power and privilege, it's not purely emotional. It is physiological. So our neural pathways in our brain, they create a box where you can put all of the things that are comfortable to you. People who talk like you, people who look like you, who think like you, it fits very nicely in that box. And so the feeling of discomfort is the pressure of stretching that box. And it also takes a huge amount of energy. It literally is easier to be exclusionary on your brain. And it also, people often feel a lot of guilt and blame and shame that comes along with that discomfort. But it's just part of being human. And so with practice and commitment, we can stretch the box. We can include more people. And then that uncomfortable feeling becomes familiar. It becomes a habit, and it doesn't take effort anymore. And so ultimately, discomfort is the pathway for sharing your power. It allows you to see things in a totally different light. It also is a sign of opportunity for growth, for curiosity. And the more we can lean into that discomfort instead of away from it, and the more that we can start owning our power and privilege, the faster we can get to solutions that work for everyone. So it's really the sweet spot for innovation and impact. And so for years, I sat in a place of discomfort as the only woman in a room, in a meeting, on an international speaking panel. And it was quite similar to how I felt when I was visiting those Maasai communities in the early days. I felt that I was invisible, like I didn't belong. And my feelings were validated by the data that was showing that less than 5% of top environmental positions in Africa are held by women. And there's a frustration that started to grow inside of me as we continue to battle climate change, biodiversity loss, and our connection to the natural world, that we are literally missing half of the population. Women's natural leadership are missing from environmental decisions that affect all of us. And so this frustration that I had, but many others, led to the creation of Women for the Environment Africa, or what we fondly call We Africa, because of course women are Africa. And it's a safe space for growth, where women leaders can be visible, can be bold, because they know that they have people that have their back. And so over the years, as we are starting to push this agenda forward, we are really exploring to see what will happen when we have more women at the decision-making table. So in the next 3 years, we are going to have over 100 women, influential women, across the continent start an environmental movement. Because it's going to be at that point where they can start to role model a better, a more impactful way to lead, one that's more inclusive, one that's more collaborative. So in just 2 cohorts, we have seen women across Africa join forces at big global meetings like COP, so they can push forward agendas or policies that affect all of us. And we have seen fellows in the last few years that have taken on CEO roles. And so things are shifting. They're shifting, but they're slowly shifting. And so when I think of all the movement we've had, it's just taken a couple of years, and we can see that all we needed was some inclusion, some power sharing, and a really supportive community. But even when we, and I say when, not if, when we get to 50% of women at that decision-making table, we still need all ages, all colors, all expertise to solve the environmental crisis. But inclusion is not just about justice. Because when we're inclusive, the outcomes, they benefit everyone. So I'd like to challenge all of us that are here today to stretch our inclusion box, because business as usual, it's not working. In the history of our planet, nature has never needed us so much. And so, bigger than me is about letting go of your ego. It's about recognizing the vast opportunities to shift power that your privilege affords you. Sharing so openly because you believe that there is enough to go around. And knowing that real, meaningful change for our planet will happen when we all come together. Because the environmental crisis that we're facing, it's bigger than me, and it is bigger than you. Thank you.